The story follows Archie Bunker at a moment in life when the world around him seems to be changing faster than he can keep up, and every change walks straight through his front door. It begins with an incident that turns him, against his will, into a public hero. One ordinary day in Queens, Archie is riding in a cab when a fellow passenger suddenly collapses and appears lifeless, stretched out like a dead fish, as he bluntly describes it later at his neighborhood bar. In his own gruff, reluctant way, Archie steps in and performs mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, trying to save a stranger he believes to be a glamorous woman. The scene is anything but romantic for him. He complains loudly that he didn't kiss nobody, and insists he only did what he had to do because them people got as much right to life as anybody else. His buddies in the bar immediately recognize how unusual this is and reward him with free drinks, cracking jokes that all his drinks are on the house as long as you keep it under two. A very Queens way of celebrating heroism without getting too sentimental. The bar owner brings in a reporter from the Long Island Press, Jim Kitchener, who wants to make Archie Citizen of the Week and hand him a check for $100. But Archie doesn't want any publicity until he hears there's money attached. Then he grudgingly agrees to tell the story, starting from the beginning in his own colorful language. S6E on a -4. Just as Archie is trying to keep the situation under control, the woman whose life he saved suddenly walks into the bar to thank him. She is elegant, theatrical, and clearly used to being looked at. Her name is Beverly LaSalle, and she has tracked Archie down via the hospital, determined to express her gratitude in person. Edith, always genuinely kind, welcomes her warmly into the bunker home later and fusses over her like any other guest. Beverly explains that she is in show business, performing 3 shows a night, and that her collapse was due to exhaustion after too many weeks without a night off. Edith, taking her words at face value, assumes Beverly is a typical female performer and even remarks that it is smart for a woman to imitate other women on stage. Then Beverly carefully corrects her. She is not a female impersonator who happens to be a woman. She is a performer, assigned male at birth, who performs in women's clothing. She uses the word transvestite, a term the bunkers barely understand. Edith is politely stunned but still tries to be kind, while Archie, arriving home and realizing the lady he rescued is not exactly who he thought, is thrown into a comic but revealing moral crisis. On the one hand, he wants the glory and the check for saving a damsel in distress. On the other, his rigid ideas about gender and masculinity are shaken by the fact that his heroic act was performed on a person he struggles to categorize. The comedy comes from Archie's inability to reconcile his prejudice with the reality that Beverly is polite, grateful, and quite brave in facing his reaction. Even as he tries to hide his discomfort, he still can't resist basking in the status of local hero, asking his family to keep quiet about certain details so the newspaper story will present him as the ideal working-class citizen who just happened to save a life on the way to work. While Archie is busy managing his hero image, drama is building inside the family. Gloria, his daughter, discovers she is pregnant. Instead of uncomplicated joy, the news triggers a serious conflict with her husband, Michael. Michael, the young, liberal intellectual of the family, has been obsessing over issues like overpopulation and the fate of an overcrowded world. In his anxiety, he starts to argue that bringing another child into this world may be irresponsible. Gloria hears not philosophy, but rejection, and her happiness turns into fear that her own husband does not want their baby. She visits Irene, the thoughtful neighbor, hoping for understanding and emotional support. Instead, she finds herself in the middle of a complex moral conversation about reproductive rights, personal autonomy, and the tension between ideals and real lives. Irene gently challenges Gloria to think clearly, but Gloria is overwhelmed and begins to consider the possibility of ending the pregnancy. When Edith enters the conversation, the emotional temperature rises. She is a woman from an earlier generation who has watched television debates about women's rights and thinks in abstract terms she might support a woman's control over her own body. Yet when the woman in question is her own daughter and the life in question is her potential grandchild, her certainty collapses. She admits that when she watches women talk about these issues on television, she can nod along, but sitting face to face with Gloria, she feels, in her own words, already in love with that baby. Gloria is torn between her love for Michael and her fear that becoming parents will drive him away. She cries that Michael left me, and I'm going to have a baby, worrying that she might lose her husband and raise a child in a broken home. Edith tries to reassure her by saying he will come back, that he probably just went to the movies, but Gloria is not convinced. In this moment, Archie walks in, with his usual gruff impatience, seemingly more irritated by the late hour and the noise than concerned about his daughter's crisis. Yet when Edith pushes him to be nice and let Gloria talk, we see a softer side he rarely shows. He sits with Gloria, and slowly, the conversation becomes a kind of father-daughter reckoning. Archie reminds her of the past, how he used to drag her to school when she was 6, how she hid behind him and cried, how other kids teased her for needing her father to take her by the hand each day. He confesses that even when he let her walk alone, he secretly followed half a block behind, tripping over garbage cans, because he was too busy watching her to see where he was going. He tells her again about the first time he saw her through the glass in the hospital nursery, when she was one newborn among many. He describes how he picked her out immediately and rapped on the glass until she looked up and, in his memory at least, gave him a big baby smile. For Archie, this story is proof of a bond that has existed from the first second of her life. As he coaxes a smile from her now, he tries to translate that bond into a reason to keep going, to face the uncertainty of motherhood with the knowledge that she was once a helpless baby he loved fiercely, and he cannot forget that feeling. Michael eventually returns home after walking the streets alone, trying to sort out his thoughts about the future. Archie cannot resist a few jabs about Michael's habit of walking and thinking at the same time, but Gloria and Edith make sure he understands how serious the situation has become. Gloria insists that anything Michael has to say he should say in front of the whole family, because they were the ones who sat with her and worried while he was gone. She reminds him that Edith has been terrified, and Archie, even if he pretends not to care, was clearly affected. Under this combined pressure, Michael abandons the abstract arguments and simply speaks from the heart. He admits that he was wrong to focus on overpopulation, wrong to let fear and theory overshadow his love for Gloria and their future child. He tells her he feels happy about the baby, genuinely happy, and that he wants to be a father. The mood lifts like a storm passing. Edith joyfully announces that she will finally be a grandmother, joking about the sequence of her life. First, wanting to be a wife, then a mother, and now finally a grandmother. Before Archie impatiently tells her to be quiet so the real point can land. In that living room, without any clever philosophy, the family moves from panic to a fragile but real hope, showing how a working-class household wrestles with moral complexity, fear, and love all at once, using jokes and arguments as their tools to survive. Parallel to these intimate family struggles, Archie faces another battle out in the world, a fight over status and dignity at work. At the loading dock where he has spent decades of his life, a new foreman position is opening up. Archie, with his seniority and old-school loyalty, believes the job should be his. However, he hears that management is under pressure to promote women into executive roles, and that his neighbor Irene Lorenzo might be considered for the role. To Archie, this is almost unthinkable. At dinner, while grumbling over cottage cheese, he launches into one of his trademark rants about what women are created for, claiming that their place is in the kitchen and in the nursery, not in offices or boardrooms. When Michael challenges him, Archie reaches back to prehistoric images of cave women with short legs and fat butts that supposedly made them easier for men to catch, so they could be forced to make meals and babies. Michael counters with sarcastic questions about cave women with long legs and skinny bodies who could outrun the men, and Archie doubles down, joking that such women had to be brought down with a rock, while cavemen with short legs and fat backsides became the ancestors of men he mocks as fags. It is an ugly caricature, but it reveals his deep anxiety. He sees the shift toward female employment and equal opportunity as a direct threat to his sense of manhood and his economic security. In the middle of this rant, Archie's longtime black co-worker Elmo shows up at the house for the first time in 20 years of working together. Archie is surprised, joking that maybe the reason Elmo's never been inside is that he was never invited. Their banter has a rough, affectionate tone. They know each other from countless hours at work, and now Elmo brings important news. He has learned that their boss is about to launch a new charity drive. and that whoever signs up first might be seen as the fair-haired boy, the favorite who gets preferential treatment. Archie immediately sees this as his ticket to securing the promotion before Irene or anyone else can claim it. The plan is simple and almost comically cynical. Show up early, volunteer for the boss's favorite cause, and hope that this act of generosity translates into career advancement. Behind the jokes and the scam, there is a serious picture of how working people maneuver within systems they do not control. Archie does not believe that experience alone will be enough to guarantee the job. He feels he must perform loyalty in a new way, aligning with the boss's charitable priorities in order to protect his family's financial future. Yet he cannot let go of his resentment that the same system now supports women's advancement, something that feels to him like the ground shifting under his feet. Across these intertwined episodes, Archie Bunker is pulled in multiple directions by forces he doesn't fully understand. Heroism in the cab forces him into contact with Beverly, whose gender identity challenges his rigid categories while also confirming that he is capable of saving anyone, not just people like himself. Gloria's pregnancy and Michael's intellectual panic drag him into a late-night heart-to-heart that proves his love for his daughter runs deeper than his bluster, as he uses old memories to remind her she has never been alone. The promotion fight at work pits his traditional ideas about gender roles against the realities of a changing economy, where women like Irene can realistically compete for positions he once considered a male birthright. Through it all, Edith acts as the emotional glue, welcoming Beverly, comforting Gloria, nudging Archie to be kinder, and reminding everyone that underneath the noise they are a family that needs each other. In the end, the story does not present neat solutions or grand ideological speeches. Instead, it shows a household navigating change through daily quarrels, awkward jokes, and small acts of courage. Archie remains stubborn and often offensive, but we see him performing CPR on a stranger, sitting quietly with his crying daughter, and worrying about his job because he genuinely wants to provide for the people under his roof. Michael, for all his talk, has to admit that love for his child matters more than abstract theories about the planet. Gloria learns that her fear can be met with support from her mother and even from a father who rarely shows tenderness. Beverly, stepping into the bunker home with full makeup and full honesty, forces them to confront the difference between their assumptions and the reality of a human being standing before them saying thank you. The bar, the workplace, and the living room form a triangle where questions of identity, morality, and power play out. But the constant thread is that life keeps moving. New babies, new headlines, new job openings, new kinds of neighbors, and the only choice the bunkers really have is whether they will grow, however slowly and clumsily, or cling so hard to the past that they miss the humanity in front of them.